The sky was falling in on them. Then Marco, almost in hypnosis, turned the ship, and there, spread out like a bowl of jewels, was the flat earth. It was like a plate full of continents, a coin tossed into the air by an indecisive god. The ship had come out perhaps 20,000 miles above it and out of vertical. Kin looked out at a hazy map of black land and silver seas fuzzed with moonlit cloud. There was what, for want of a better term, how many people had mapped flat planets, a polar cap hugging one side of the disk. Moonlit? There was a moon, apparently a few thousand miles above the disk, and it shone. It couldn't be reflected light, there was nothing to reflect, and there were stars. Between the ship and the disk, there were stars. Strata is Terry Pratchett's third novel. It's a science fiction story set in the distant future and is about travellers going to visit a flat, disc-shaped world. A Discworld, not the Discworld. The story centres on a character called Kin Arad, who is a planetary engineer. She builds bespoke planets for humanity to go and inhabit as it stretches out across the galaxy. And she is approached and given the opportunity to go and investigate a world that is entirely flat and disc-shaped. She goes to that world and is accompanied by Marco, who is a Kung, which is basically a warrior-like race, and Silver, who is a Shand, which is been described pretty much as like a bear with tusks, and she is the linguist on this mission. So they go to discover that this flat disc-shaped world is there and it exists, and it's about them exploring and ultimately trying to escape from that disc-shaped world. From what I understand about Strata, it's a take on the Ringworld novel by Larry Niven, which is a classic piece of science fiction about a ring-shaped world that goes around the sun in a solar system. I haven't read Ringworld, and I watched Daniel Green's excellent review of it on YouTube, and if I'm completely honest, I'm not in a particular hurry to read it. But this seems to be Terry Pratchett's take on Ringworld. It's ultra interesting that it seems to be very, very influenced by The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, both in the style of humour, where Terry Pratchett's humour is just developing, and a lot of it feels like he's really tapping into Douglas Adams' style of humour a lot. There's also about the fact that the worlds are built and bespoke, and part of that feels very much like the whole Slarty Bartfast section. Oh, his name's not important. Those sections in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy book about the worlds that are built bespoke for a specific purpose. It's not somewhere I'd recommend anyone to start reading the Discworld novels in. It's not the Discworld, it is a Discworld, but it really feels like a bit of a testing ground where Pratchett started to play with some of the ideas that he would later develop much more thoroughly. So obviously you've got the disc-shaped world. You've also got some other things that come into play a little bit later on, like there's a Grim Reaper in this book as well. There is things like there's a pub called the Broken Drum. So, you know, these are things which Pratchett played with in Strata, but then didn't really properly come into their own until he started with the Discworld, which is what he started to do next. I wouldn't recommend it as a starting point for reading Discworld. It is Discworld Book 0, so it isn't really part of the Discworld set of stories. It's more a bit of a curiosity for people who are a bit of a completist and want to see where some of these proto-ideas come from. It's short, so it's not going to outstay its welcome. You're not going to get bored with it, but beyond it being a bit of a curiosity and a piece of proto Discworld fiction, it's just a competently written piece of comedic science fiction. It's not bad. It's just not what Pratchett later becomes. I don't tend to do ratings too much, but if I was to give this a rating out of 5, I'd probably go for about 2.5. It's not bad. If you want to delve really deep into the whole history of the Discworld, it's an interesting thing to read. It isn't essential reading by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still a decent book. You know, it's not too long, so you won't get bored with it. You can burn through it pretty quickly. And as for Terry Pratchett completists, it's always worth seeing where he came from. I'm currently going through all of the Discworlds from start to finish, rereading some and reading a couple for the first time. This was the first step on the journey for this. This is probably, I would say, book 0 rather than book 1. If you'd like to see more of my Discworld reviews, please consider subscribing. And the next one I will be reading will be really where it all kicks off. And this is the first true Discworld book, The Colour of Magic. I hope to see you, and I hope you enjoyed this. Have a good read.